Jonathan, not a surprise after what we heard from the speaker last week. He was going to bifurcate, I believe was his term, the Israeli funding from the rest of this massive supplemental that President Biden, he says now he will put a standalone budget request for Israel on the floor on Thursday. The Senate's not doing it that way, though, and the White House isn't asking for that. So what are we going to go into a new standoff with the new speaker and Mitch McConnell?
It could be. I mean, this is an interesting step. For new Speaker Johnson, in a lot of ways, this is kind of like the easiest first step he could do. There's very few things that have as much bipartisan support as aiding Israel. So his first full week on the job, he could potentially get an easy win, but it does put him in contrast with the White House and fellow Republicans. You point out Mitch McConnell. So Mitch McConnell gave a speech today in Louisville talking about how he linked Ukraine and Israel as the same kind of fight, the same kind of need for the U.S. to support its allies, to oppose its enemies where they've tried to make advances. And so it's not just a clash between Democrats and Republicans. It's a clash between kind of new school America First Republicans and the kind of old school internationalist Republicans that Mitch McConnell represents.
There's also the aspect of funding this. I mean, we just spoke with Director Brainard, who talked about these low tax receipts because you were pressing her on the fiscal deficit. To fund this, the Republicans want to cut into the money of the Inflation Reduction Act that was going to the IRS to go after people to make sure they were paying their taxes. How is that going to go into a conference and somehow manage to get passed through a Democratic Senate?
I mean, that really has no chance of making it through the Democratic Senate. Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, just today at the briefing, just moments ago, was asked about that. And she just said, we've never offset emergency funding. That's why it's called emergency funding. So we're not going to be doing it this time around. But the challenge I think that, the new speaker has is that he's kind of under the gun in the same way that Kevin McCarthy was, in that he doesn't have a lot of flexibility to anger members of his conference because he might end up tossed to the curb the same way McCarthy was. And so that's the tension there is, he's trying to figure out how to thread that needle and potentially get something through that won't leave him potentially out of a job or with people upset with him. But so far, they've not really found a way to do that. That would be something that, as you pointed out, even the Republicans in the Senate would accept, not let alone, the Democrats.
Well, it's not lost on me that Mitch McConnell, you mentioned today in Louisville, appears with Oksana Markarova. She's actually with him in Kentucky, the Ukrainian ambassador to the U.S. So we don't have to guess where he is on this. And I guess my question is, could these all pass as standalone bills in the House? Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, and border security. You've got enough Democrats, I assume, to push Ukraine over the line.
I think if you put them up as standalone bills, they probably would, but you have to remember the Republicans don't only want to put up bills that have a majority of Republican support. And that's where the question comes in on Ukraine, is that there's been a lot of skepticism among some segments of Republicans towards Ukraine aid. And so that bill would get enough support, I think, from Republicans and Democrats, but I don't know if it has a majority within the Republican conference. And I think that's partly why Democrats want to link these things all together, because everyone's going to vote for Israel aid. Republicans are almost all going to vote for border aid or border security money. So that's where the tension comes in of linking them together or separating them apart.
Well, this is the tension of the Republican Party. It's the traditional hawks versus the populist base. And that really also was on display this weekend when Mike Pence, the vice president who was running for 2024, is now stepping out of the race.
I came here to say it's become clear to me this is not my time. So after much prayer and deliberation, I have decided to suspend my campaign for president effective today. Now, I'm leaving this campaign, but let me promise you, I will never leave the fight for conservative values, and I will never stop fighting to elect principled Republican leaders to every office in the land. So help me God.
This is not my time, says the former vice president. Okay, so what's next for him, Kate?
For Pence? I mean, I think that we've seen essentially that there's not a lot of takers for his sort of brand of politics at this moment. So, maybe, if Donald Trump's the nominee and wins, I don't see him getting a post in the Trump administration going forward, given their history at this point. I think the more interesting kind of thing to look at is how some of the other candidates have emerged in the race to kind of be the number two to Trump. Trump keeps widening his lead in Iowa, nationally, in New Hampshire. There was just a poll out today showing that Trump had widened his lead in Iowa. But the interesting thing is kind of that race to be the alternative. And so what we really saw, the most interesting thing out of the Iowa poll is that now Nikki Haley has tied with Ron DeSantis there. And so she's up by 10 points from the August poll, whereas DeSantis is down by like 3 points. And so the trajectory is good for Haley, bad for DeSantis. And, I think, as far as Pence, it's kind of the way that these things work, I guess, is that people throw their hats in the ring and then they sort of, the numbers balloon and then they sort of go back down again.